嘿，大家好，我是 ETHAN， 那个卖房子的小郑。那在我旁边的是 Joshua， 他之前有来上我的节目。那 Joshua 来也是我练习我英文对话的时候了。OK， 那如果你今天是第一次认识我，我是一个在南加州的全职地产经纪。那在这个频道，我会用一镜到底的方式展现一些南加州漂亮的房子。同时间也会给大家南加州甚至美国房地产市场的动向，就像是今天。那在这里我再介绍一次 Joshua。Joshua, you graduate from Duke, right? Mm-hmm. Econ major.
Yes.
Okay, so you are pretty familiar with how the economy works.
A little bit, yes.
Which leads to today's topic. We are going to talk about the word that's everywhere in the news, recession.
Yes.
Can you tell us what recession is?
Yes.
The definition?
Yes, the definition is 2 consecutive quarters in a row of negative GDP, which is gross domestic product, or just all the goods and services that are produced. So when the economy slows down, there's a decrease in real income, in production, things like that.
Oh, okay. Okay. But we haven't, it's not here yet, right? We haven't seen that number yet.
Well, the first quarter actually this year is negative. So right now the quarter hasn't ended, it ends end of June. If this quarter is negative, then we would technically be in a recession already.
Technically.
We could be, yeah. Some people say that, but other people say maybe in November.
Oh, I see. Are there any like key indicator that will indicate, hey, we are in recession?
Yeah, there actually are, and that's why it's such a big buzzword right now, because a lot of the indicators are already here. So here's a chart, for example, when the Fed hikes the rates. That's one of the indicators, and the Fed has already did that last month and this month.
Yes.
They're going to do it again. When the two-year yield curve and the 10-year yield curve inverts. Do you know what that means?
Yes, sort of. But you can explain to my audience.
Sure. So the 10-year Treasury and 2-year Treasury are investment vehicles where you put your money away and you get a yield or a return. So Ethan, would you think that if you put money away for 10 years versus money away for 2 years, which would you expect a higher interest?
Of course, longer.
Longer, absolutely correct. So typically, when things are normal, when the economy is healthy, the yield or the interest on the 10-year is higher.
Right.
But when the economy is unhealthy, the 2-year can actually be higher than the 10-year.
Okay.
So that's what they call the inversion. And here's a chart that we look at as how it is a reliable indicator. And when you see the zero, anytime it goes below the zero, this is the yield on the 10-year minus the yield on the 2-year.
Right.
So if it's positive, it means the 10-year is higher. If it's negative, it means it's inverted. Or
if it's positive, we are in healthy situation. I see.
Yep. And it's just like, when your body is not feeling well, you have a fever, it's a sign of something's wrong. That's what the inverted yield curve is, sign of the economy, something's wrong with the economy. So if you look at this chart here, basically the gray periods are where there's a recession, and anytime it goes below zero when it's inverted, you see that within 18 months usually a recession follows. So that's very common. And then right now, if you look at this other chart, this happened already earlier this year. So
we already have inversion.
The yield curve inverted this year already. Another one is when the unemployment rate drops below 4%. So if you look at this chart right here, the yellow line is 4%. And again, historically, the recession or the gray periods follow pretty closely every time we go below the 4%.
That's very interesting. That will be a question I will ask you later.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's kind of counterintuitive.
Correct.
I know that every time when we have a cycle, it's always like caused by different factors. So what caused the possible recession this time?
Yeah, there's a lot of different causes of recession. It's probably a combination and not just any one. So inflation is always one of them. And there was a lot of inflation due to the government stimulus.
Oh, yeah.
Because of COVID, they spent trillions of dollars. Also supply chain issues, which we're experiencing, that's causing inflation. The Fed hiking the rates. What that does is that makes it more expensive for people and businesses to borrow, for them to invest. So that's going to make them harder to expand, and that's going to slow down production and spending. And then also when companies, stop hiring people, or when they even start laying people off.
Oh, I see. Question number 3. Since you're an economy major, you are pretty familiar with the whole economy cycle. So what would be a complete economy cycle looks like?
Yeah, so this is a recession, Ethan, is definitely part of a normal business cycle. And kind of the unemployment, I think what you were talking about earlier, is some people think like when unemployment is very low, why is that leading to recession? Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, if everyone have a job, I mean, everyone's doing good, why would that lead to recession?
Yeah, great question. That's like you said, that's counterintuitive. But one of the most reliable, perfect indicators in the last 70 years is when, if you look at here, when unemployment is super low and it increases by 0.5%. And kind of going back to the chart, we looked at, it signals the end of a expansion cycle. So we've been in a period of expansion for over the last 10 years, right? Like the economy, the stocks have gone up. So people's incomes are rising. And now when you have more income, what do?
Spend more.
You spend more, so you purchase more. So now the demand for goods and services rises, right? And so businesses, when there's more demand, what do?
Produce more.
Produce more, and they also need what? What else do?
They hire more people.
Exactly, they hire more people. So now they hire more people, and as they hire more people, what does that do to the people's salaries or wages?
Oh, they increase.
Increase, right? People's wages increase. What do?
Spend more.
They spend more. So you kind of see this creates this cycle, and it goes and goes and goes until the unemployment rate drops and drops and drops. And then now these companies are expanding. They're at a maximum capacity. They've hired all these people that are more and more expensive to hire.
Right.
And then when it gets to kind of the end of that cycle, which is where the unemployment rate is below 4%, it kind of means things are coming to the end. So when people are spending more and more and more, what does that do to the prices of the goods and services?
Well, of course, they want to make more, higher.
Higher, right? So now that's what causes inflation, and now it makes things less affordable, and that's when the Fed hikes rates. Because look, if you look, the average household has about $60,000 in personal debt. So credit cards, cars, HELOCs, things like that, personal loans. And because of the rate hikes, it costs them about $88 more to pay for that debt each month. And on top of that, we all feel the increase in gas prices and food, right?
Yes.
So on average, if you look at this, the total a family spends more, about $240. And most families are living paycheck to paycheck. If they're spending more money on these three items, what does it mean? What does it mean they have to do to offset that? Travel, eating out, shopping, things like that, right? So now $240 might not sound like a lot, but you multiply that by the tens of millions of families that it affects. Now you're talking about, as a whole, as a country, they're losing billions in revenue. So again, remember, these companies are hired to the max. They have very expensive labor. Their capacity is high, but now all of a sudden their revenue drops by billions of dollars. So what do these companies do?
They let people go.
They'll lay people off, and unfortunately, we're seeing that right now. We're seeing a lot of companies in the news, right? All different sectors laying people off, and this is unfortunately kind of just the beginning. Tesla, Wells Fargo, Compass, Redfin, just so many different companies you see on the news. More companies every day. And now, for the people who are laid off, what happens to their spending?
They don't have much to spend.
Yeah, that's going to go down, right? Because they don't have money, they don't have income. The businesses, like we talked about, they're receiving less. That reduces their revenue more, and now they're going to lay off more people, and it kind of starts this cycle.
Okay.
And how that affects inflation is now all of a sudden there's less demand for goods and services.
Right.
So then what does that do to the prices?
It will drop.
It will drop. So that's how recession leads to reduction in inflation, and that's kind of how the business cycle works.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. This won't be the first time the country facing a recession. When recession hits before, how the market reacts, especially real estate market.
Yeah. So it's happened a lot, and I want to share about two specific examples where it's very similar to now. So if you look at this chart, in the late 70s, early 80s, you see inflation went from 7 to 14%.
What? 14%?
Yeah, that's even higher than today.
Okay, yeah,
like
that's
8.6 right now, so
okay,
a lot worse, but super high. And what that did was it pushed mortgage rates from 12 to 18%.
12 to, wow, mortgage rate was at 18%?
Yeah, so people think it was high now, but it's actually historically pretty low.
Okay.
And we talked about this before, Ethan, but just as a reminder, what is the number one cause of mortgage rates to go up or down?
Inflation.
Inflation, right? Yeah. So that's why when inflation happens, like we see here, went up to 14%, the mortgage rates shot up. And then what the Fed did in response is they raised the rates from 11% to 20%, and then inflation actually dropped to 5%. And then in response, mortgage rates dropped back down to 12%. So mortgage rates during that recession dropped 6%.
Oh, so meaning the rate that we consider high now might eventually drop.
Yes, that's definitely what they're forecasting. Another example in the early 2000s is similar situation.
Okay.
Inflation went up to 3.5%. Mortgage rates, went to 8.5%. Feds raised the rates to 6.5%, and then inflation dropped from 3.5% to 1%, and then mortgage rates dropped from 8.5% to 5.5%. And then the economy also went into a recession.
Okay.
And then so now today's situation is similar, right? The inflation went up to 8.6%. Mortgage rates are now at around 5.5%.
Right.
The Feds have raised rates, and they're going to continue to raise rates, until the end of the year. So the inflation response, kind of based on what we discussed earlier, the cycle, it should drop. And then mortgage rates should drop.
Yeah, that's why a lot of my clients, when they are purchasing a house now, they choose like 7-year ARM or 10-year ARM to get a lower interest rate than 30-year fix. Later on, when the interest rate drop, they can always refinance. Okay, yes. So that's the strategy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And as far as the housing market, like in recessions, I want to show you an interesting graph. This is a chart of the home prices through recessions. So since the 1960s, the dark blue periods are recessions. In every recession, except the 2008, because there was bad loans and it was an outlier, you see the home prices have either been steady or increased during recessions, and it's because the rates drop significantly, or at least 1.5% or more every recession.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We have learned a lot about recession and what to anticipate. At the end of my video, do you want to introduce you again? He is one of my preferred lender. He get his job done, and he provide very good service. Now, share your information with my audience.
Yeah, here's my contact, my Facebook, Instagram. I share a lot of these updates on there to keep you posted. We're all about helping our buyers have that competitive advantage and get offers accepted. We have a $5,000 guarantee. We do different things that you know of, Ethan, of sending a video to the listing agents. Just make your offer stand out, and of course, provide that 5-star experience like you mentioned.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. 好的，那今天的影片就到这边，我们下次见喽，拜拜。哦，对了，如果你还没有订阅我频道的朋友，现在可以把它订阅起来。如果觉得今天影片内容对你的朋友有帮助的话，分享一下喽。那我们下次见，拜拜。